podcast.
Greetings, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Metal Command podcast. Tony here with you, and today I am bringing you an interview with myself and Kim Olesen and Henrik Norgaard of the band Anubis Gate. These guys are from Denmark. This is a band who creates some incredible music, very inspiring progressive music for that matter, more of a progressive heavy metal band. And they have a new album called Interference, which I've heard the entire album. I think the album is fantastic. It's definitely a great release, probably one of the best albums they have ever put out. I'd rate it right up there with the album Horizons, which I absolutely love. And I'll review the album down the road. And I'll put some links in the show notes to many of you that may not know who these guys are that may want to check them out. So anyhow, with that said, this is the interview with myself and Kim Olesen and Henrik Norgaard of the band Anubis Gate. Gentlemen, it's great to have you on the Metal Command show. Finally have a new album that is going to be coming out entitled Interference. And I finally have had a chance to listen to it for the last week. And let's talk about the new album, man. Talk about it. Whoever wants to start first. But let's talk about the new album coming out. And I'll start with Kim. Kim, we'll start with you. What do you think? How do you feel about this record, compared to some of your other ones?
I know artists always say this, but because you always think the new album is the best one you've ever done. So, but it's the best one we've ever done. For me, but maybe it's because for me, I know we've been working on it 6 years, but it's still new music for me compared to Horizons, which is so ancient now. Mm-hmm. I'm very happy with it, and it's it was strange because composing the album was so easy this time. It's the easiest album I've done ever, but getting it done was probably the hardest album. That's why it's called Interference, because everything came in the way. So I'm just the fact that it's getting released is a major triumph in the making of this album.
Yeah. We actually, at some point, thought that perhaps this is never going to come out, really, because there were so many abstractions and things going bad. But luckily, it's here, and I think all the albums are different in a lot of ways, and this is just another step on our journey, really. So I don't really see it as the best we've done. I think it's just another step in this. But of course, when it's new, we always think that this is the shit, and we are so thrilled to get it out there soon. So we're very fortunate that this is happening, and we're looking forward to some reviews as well, right, Kim?
Go on, Henrik. Just say it. You think it's a middle of the road album? No,
of course not. We never done those. But it's great to have some original songs out now because the last one was full of cover songs, and it's actually been 6 years since we released any real Anubis Gate songs, you could say that. So It's enormous joy to finally release this thing. Yes. And I like it, of course. Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing it. Or we wouldn't be doing it, of course.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I haven't done a review on it yet, but I'll probably say, I don't like to say, oh my God, it's the best album, because I haven't listened to it for long enough. Usually it takes months for that to really come to determine that. But I would say it's definitely one of the better ones you've put out. I do like it better than Covered in Black as well. So not saying that one was bad, but I'm just saying I like it better than the last one. Per se, I would probably say for me, Horizons in this album are probably my two favorite. I don't know which one I would like better, but I think musically, just the way the songs are written, just the songwriting in general, and I think they're two different records too. But Horizons is probably my favorite, and this one is right up there with it, but usually it takes time for me to say, okay, is this going to be my favorite album? It could be a year, it just, you have to, when you start going back to an album a year, 2 years, 3 years later, and you listen to it a lot, then okay, maybe I like this one better than the other ones. It's a time factor for me, but I would probably say it's one of the best albums you guys have done. And we'll just leave it at that. At least because I haven't done a full review on it, but we'll just kind of leave the preview of the video I will record on it. So we'll go from there. But I think it's cool. You want to know why I think I like it a lot? It's different than a lot of the other records. I really believe that. I think the vocal melodies, for example, are a lot catchier, are a lot more, especially when you get to, the choruses of the songs. I mean, there's a lot more hooks and stuff that grab you on it. I think that was the first thing I noticed on the very first song in the album, and it continues throughout the rest of the record. I found myself, when you have a song that's 7 or 8 minutes and it feels like it's 4 minutes, right? Mm-hmm. That's when a band has really done something pretty awesome. So that's where I see it anyway.
All right.
Thanks.
That's right. Thanks. Yeah.
So, but let's talk about interference now. Henrik, do you write a lot of the lyrics on the albums? Kim, I don't know who does a lot of that, but it's interesting. Is there any theme or concept behind the record itself? Behind the title, behind any of the songs? Are they related in any way? Or is it not like that? I mean, I'm not asking. I don't think it's a concept album. At least it doesn't feel like it. But that's where I'm asking you guys.
Yeah, I do the lyrics. Yes, and I don't think it's not a concept album in any way. Still, as we did this time, we usually do something under some kind of theme or something. There's some kind of I don't know. Every album has a sort of theme to it, and this one was interference, and some of the lyrics, not all of them, but most of them, deal with this word or this concept or whatever you can say. So in some ways they are related, but not entirely, and not as a sequence of any story or anything like that. No.
I would say, as one who didn't write any lyrics this time, and usually if I do, it's just one verse here or there or something, not much, because I'm not much of a lyricist. But for me, it's the album where Henrik hit me the most of all our albums with the lyrics in a good way, because when you get to our age, you sometimes have to work on yourself and how you view the world and how you deal with the world to get the most out of it, working with your own psyche and stuff like that. And a lot of songs deal with that, and I'm seeing myself in seeing the journey that I've been on in a lot of the lyrics, actually. And so that was very nice, actually. And some of them, the title track is kind of, it has several layers. It deals on the first layer, it deals with how difficult it can be to create, and how you can be in a perfect circle, and someone sends you a text message and you sort of, and then the bubble has burst and you can't, then you have to wait till the day after to try to get in the mood for creating again. Right. But on the other hand, it also deals with the loss of our founder member Jesper, because he was one of those guys. One of the pictures I have of him is sitting for weeks with his guitar and creating riffs and perfecting them, and to him, creativity was maybe almost a curse. So I like that there are those two, for those of us who knew Jesper, there are those two levels in that song. You can hear the lyrics and just think, oh, that's about creativity. And if you know Jesper, you also know, oh wow, I can see that. I know what this particular line is about.
Yeah, but it's also it's called interference for some reason, and that was also the what you call it, the curse, Kim. But yeah,
The
you could
curse
say
of
that.
creation.
Yeah, you could say that Jesper also was interfered all the time by other stuff, right? And so that's the same thing we feel sometimes when we're in this creativity thing, that or in life in general, that you get interfered by stuff, and sometimes it's for the better and sometimes it's for the worse, because it can also be an inspiration to what you do, that you are interfered by something that you didn't expect. Yeah,
like a pandemic, for example.
Like a pandemic, just like a pandemic. And I mean, on top of that, my wife had a crazy bypass surgery, and my dad got Parkinson's, and we had to move him to a nursing home. All stuff like that, that suddenly it takes, wow, that's 3 months where that has interfered with the creation. So, and that's just how life is. There is nothing you can do about it, because we all get issues as we get older. And and when I read stuff about on music forums, where people wonder, why did it take them 7 years to make that album? I mean, because I didn't understand when I was young how come they take so long, but now I totally get it. It's simply because they're getting older and stuff is happening. They have children, they have grandchildren, and people get sick. And so interference, it's not even like it has to be a bad thing. When we get a grandchild, it's a good thing. But of course it interferes and makes the creative it takes longer to create.
Yeah.
So my favorite song, and the title totally reminds me of Kim, is The Intergalactic Dream of Stardom. It's actually my favorite song in the album. Maybe talk a bit about that one, because when I ended up listening to that, I kind of had to go back and listen to it again because I liked it that much. And let's talk about that song a little bit. I mean, I don't think that doesn't sound like it really has much to do with the theme of interference, but anybody want to shed some light on that track for me?
Yeah. Yes, it's the longest one. It's the closest we get to a really epic song on this album. Although we have two others that are close, around 8 minutes or 8 minutes plus. But it was a long creation as far as I remember, and it's Kim who wrote the music, and I wrote the lyrics and the vocal melodies for it, and it ended up being this strange search for intergalactic what you could say, that it's kind of inspired by the film Interstellar, really. That you go on and you have an idea that somewhere in the galaxy there might be somewhere else, some place where we could go and we could be happy and we could to get off this earth, really, when time is, and then the character in the song finds out that it was a complete waste of time, and his what he's actually running from is his own life on Earth. So it had no meaning, really. We're stuck here, and it's good. I think that's the point of it. And it goes in so many directions, and I also find this to be the best song on the album. I totally agree with you. That's my favorite too. So over to Kim.
You know what? That's a good movie, by the way. That's actually one of the. They went through a lot of trouble to really research physics and all sorts of stuff when it came to that. That's probably one of my favorite movies of all time. In fact, I just rewatched it a week ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's interesting because, when you say it's probably your favorite song off the album, I definitely, that was the song I connected with. Realistically, the first 2 or 3 songs on it, the first song I think is great, Emergence, but it's just, it's to me, what has caught me in the difference between this record and some of the past albums is that I really believe a lot of the vocal parts, a lot of the stuff from the singing perspective is what changed. And when I say that, it just, a lot of the vocal melodies and those kinds of things have really improved a lot, to me, compared to the last album, because they more or less kind of reel you in. There's a lot of hooks, as we like to say here. But I think that there was a lot more of that on this album. Horizons had a lot of that too, but this album is just, compared to what you've done before, I think, as far as the vocal melodies go, I think is the best that the band has ever done when it comes to, the songwriting and everything. Because the first song, really it's not long. It's pretty straightforward, but Emergence, but it just pulls you in and you go from there. Usually that first couple songs are crucial, as I say.
Yeah. Right. Thanks.
I also think that, and I could be wrong, but to me it sounds like Henrik had an extra gear of aggression that he could. I mean, Henrik never sounds aggressive, but there was an extra gear of power I maybe hadn't heard him use on our previous albums.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you can sing a bit more forceful now. I don't know if it's just me imagining it, or if it's just the way the album is mixed. But it's like
interesting.
It feels more powerful to me than when I listen to Covered in Black.
I think I completely agree with you, and I think that is mainly, I think it's the songwriting that makes it happen like that. I mean, you can make somebody sound good, bad, whatever, but I think the songwriting is why that sounds like that. Because like when I go and listen to it, the vocal performance in any kind of power in Henrik in your voice has always been there. I just think the songwriting is why the songwriting is more powerful. Let's put it that way.
Oh yeah. All right.
That's where I see where Kim's coming from, because I get it. The songwriting it's more the songwriting than really the production or the mix. And it's interesting, when I look at you guys putting this record out, you went to a smaller label, and I think that was actually a pretty good idea. And that label, because I'm now on their mailing list, they have some cool stuff on it. There's a couple other bands that they've emailed me and I've been able to listen to, and there's some really, they have some cool music on that label, actually.
I know that they're just they're so cool and so cool to deal with, and one of the things that I would have liked to do with Lance when we were on Nightmare was, it would have been nice if we were in the same time zone, because we would have talked that much more on the phone.
Yeah.
But when people in Minnesota sleep, we are up, more or less. And I mean, that's so being able, and that's not a dig on Lance, because it's not his fault that we're not in the same time zone. But, if I have a question, or if Henk from No Dust have a question, he'll just call me and say, what do you think is best with this and on that? And that's really, it makes, instead of making communications drawn out on several days, because one mail and you get an answer the next day, and you can solve so much in 20 minutes.
I mean, Minnesota's an hour behind me. Yeah, I mean, like they're I think they're an hour or two behind me, actually. So it's one of those. Yeah, I totally get the time difference. Like I said, and the time difference is definitely why I do a lot of my interviews early in the morning here, as opposed to, like in the afternoons or at night, because of the time difference. Sometimes that can create, communication issues. But yeah, Lance is cool, man. I've always liked Nightmare Records and what he's done with them. And, at the same time, though, it's cool that you guys have this small label from Europe. And, instead of going with like a bigger conglomerate where they sign all these, like some of these labels, they have like, back when I started doing the show 25 years ago, a lot of labels, they might have 20, 25 bands. Now they got like 80, so you just become this number.
Yeah.
And in today's day and age, bands don't necessarily need that. You get a small label to help distribute and promote you. And I think you guys went down the correct path on that.
Mm-hmm.
We got a good feeling too. And what Michael's band, Third Eye, signed on No Dust as well. And what struck me is how much work they put into the promotion.
Mm-hmm.
And, that's a crucial thing right now. And because it's the only way people will discover you have a record out, unless you pay insane amounts. You found one of the negatives.
I did, actually. Yeah, I do.
Unless you want to pay for it yourself, of course. You can also pay a promotion company, but that's going to cost. So,
but promotion companies are also being hired by labels as well. So, if you have a promotion company, I'll give you an example. If you have a promotion company that, you'll be hired by two, some record labels will hire 2 or 3 of them. And so I'll get like the same email practically from like 3 different people in 3 different companies. And then it gets to the point where, they may take on every band in these labels. Sometimes they're promoting 100 some bands, and it becomes, like my email box fills up with every single day. I probably have 100 to 200 emails from labels, publicists. Last year, I counted 47,000 emails that I received from somebody.
Insane.
And to put that, and to really put that into context, when I first started the show, and I'm talking that's for the year, I probably had 1,800. I found my old Mac Power PC from the 90s. I actually powered it up, and I'm like, I got emails from labels. I from 1999, and I went in and I counted them, and I put them all in a folder, and then I looked at how many emails were in a folder. It was like 1,800, something like that. So, obviously the climate has changed, and it's easier to record than it used to be, but at the same time, record labels now just sign tons of bands, and it's you can get lost. So it's better to have a smaller label in some sense for you guys, because look, you're not gonna be the fish in a pool with like 100 other ones. You're gonna be in there with 20. And you get more of a priority. Sometimes that's better.
Of course.
Yes. And I also think, in regards to what you said, Tony, that we can count ourselves lucky to just make it in to the trail of the CD age, where there weren't so many bands, and the only way to actually really get out was to have a record deal and was to get promoted. Because imagine if this was our first album.
Yeah.
What a huge amount of work it is for new bands to establish themselves in a market where there is so much music. And we were lucky that we did. We are lucky that we don't have to do that now, because we built a name so many years ago.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, the one thing about your records that, of course, has been pretty consistent is how they sound. They have always sounded very, very good. The first album is kind of, it's your debut album, but the first couple, which are a lot different. But, if you look at the last, say, 5 albums since Andromeda Unchained, basically, they've all sounded phenomenal. Amazing. Production, mixing, everything.
Yeah, I guess we have pretty high standards. We have been lucky to have been recorded and mixed by Jacob Hansen,
Yeah, that also helps.
That helps. I mean, it doesn't get better. He's world class. There is a reason people go to him, and he can take any band and make them sound fantastic. This album and the last album, Covered in Colors, was mixed by me, but the only reason I've been able to do that was that I've been allowed to look over Jacob's shoulder for all those years. And he did the drum sound for both of those albums too. He helped us. So, I mean, if you have a good drum sound, it's quite a bit easier to make everything else sound good in that context.
Yeah.
Because I can't mix drums. I can, but not as good nowhere near as good as Jacob can.
Well, Jacob Hansen is a phenomenal producer. I mean, he's
Absolutely.
he's up there with guys like Andy Sneap. He's up there with like a Dennis Ward, guys that really make this kind of music sound really good. He's just definitely in that category.
And I would say, I still don't to this day understand. I mean, Jacob is a big name, but he should be the biggest name. I still don't understand why he's not that, but in a way it's lucky because then he still has time to work with us. But I mean, his name should be as big as Andy Sneap or Flemming Rasmussen or because.
I don't know. I think it's pretty big. I think his name's pretty big. I mean, if you look at the stuff that I see on my end, promotion wise, I mean, his name is everywhere. So yeah. I mean, like when bands work with him, I mean, he's one of the guys. Like if someone says, "Oh my God, Jacob Hansen is mixing this album," it's a pretty common theme, and it's pretty well known that people get excited when he produces and mixes a record. It's how it is. It's not. I think he's up there. I don't know I don't know anything about his business, obviously, but I'm going to assume that he's definitely still he's a pretty big name up there with anybody else. I mean, I don't see anybody else being talked about more than him. So it's how it is.
I think maybe it's just because I want him to be the biggest because he's our friend.
Yeah, right.
Well, perhaps the biggest reason he's as good is because he's Danish. That's why.
I don't know. Maybe.
I'll tell you what. It's funny you mentioned that because he was in the band for a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. And singing with them. The one thing that Jacob Hansen I think does really well. Every one of these guys that I named. There's so many. There's a couple other guys as well, but like Andy Sneap's probably more well known for producing thrash metal. He's not really as much. I mean, yeah, he did mix the last Dream Theater album, but like Jacob is more known for power metal bands and more progressive stuff that's really actually more difficult to mix, right? More on the progressive side. But like, for example, the band Induction, I mean, his mix on that thing was insane. I mean, it's just the guy, anything he does sounds amazing. So, but I think more on the progressive stuff. And I think part of the reason that, say, someone like him maybe isn't, say, as well known as Andy Sneap is because he does work with and do a lot more progressive metal, which, let's face it, it's not as well known as, say, doing Judas Priest or doing, an album for, like a lot of these thrash bands. So I think that sometimes progressive music has its own sort of diehard audience, and I think he's doing more of that stuff. And that stuff, let's be honest. I mean, it's not prog metal is really not as talked about as thrash metal, at least from what I see from the press side of things. But he does an amazing job. And those kind of albums are really difficult to mix. There's so many frequencies you got to deal with. You have all these songs that have different time changes and, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that's the reason that, you're saying he's not the biggest. I think it's just the type of music that he does. It's nothing to do with him and his capabilities. I mean, Induction is a straight up European power metal band. they're young kids. I mean, it's Kai Hansen's son that's in the band, but the band, the songs, and just the production and the sound is just outstanding. I mean, he does very good at that. And, but I think that's why, he's not, again, it's like I said, I think that's why Jacob Hansen isn't as well known, is because he does a lot of more progressive metal stuff than most other guys do.
Maybe that'll change after Voyagers made it so far in the Eurovision contest. Who knows? Maybe prog metal will get more recognized because, here in Denmark, it's like we have this saying that, and of course it's not entirely true, but, the Danes like their metal more aggressive than we deliver it. Denmark is not a huge market for us. And as Jacob actually once said, if you're really singing clean, just forget about it in Denmark.
Really?
Yeah.
Strange. Yeah, they like their growl.
The Danes like their growls. It must be a Viking thing.
The Danes like the growls. That's it. That's interesting. I never knew that.
Yeah.
Sad but true.
So if you're like a death metal band or a thrash metal band or a black metal band, then it's big in Denmark.
Well, you have
easier.
The scene is much bigger in Denmark. There are many bands, but the scene is much bigger in Denmark for anything that has screaming vocals. And I mean, here in Denmark, what big bands are there with clean vocals? Pretty Mates, isn't that almost it?
Kind of, but it's not. Pretty Maids doesn't all clean vocals. Not screaming, but it's not like he's singing. He's not, he's not singing like Ronnie Atkins, right? Yeah, I'm sorry, he's not singing like Michael Kiske. Ronnie Atkins doesn't sound like that, but he's got a rougher voice, though.
Yes, he's a rock and roll singer, basically, and fantastic at it.
You had Artillery.
Yeah, Artillery, but that's also
they have more cleaner vocals, though. Even back in the old days, they weren't they didn't Artillery never sounded like Metallica, right? Even though Flemming Rasmussen produced one of their albums, they never any singer they've ever had, wasn't as rough sounding as, say, the singer of Overkill or like Exodus. They had more melodic vocals into the music. Maybe not to the extreme that Anthrax did, but they still had more of that. So yeah, it's interesting to hear how some of the scenes change from country to country over there. You go over the border and all of a sudden power metal's like the thing, right?
Yeah. I only have to drive, for 1 hour and I'm in power metal land.
Yeah.
Because that's how far I am from Germany. So maybe I should just move there.
No,
don't move there.
No, don't. Yeah.
Stay where you're at. It's happier. It's happy in Denmark.
We are. They say so.
They say Denmark and Finland are the two happiest countries in the world.
I don't find that hard to believe even, but I live in sort of happy Denmark, and I guess it's like living in Florida. If you always have sun and good weather, then
like we do.
Yeah.
It's like it's funny. It's funny. It's like Danish people are just always happy, man. It's like when every time I go and I look at a photo, right? When I go watch Formula One racing and I see a photo and the only guy smiling is Kevin Magnussen, and I totally think that because he's a Dane, right? And then we have IndyCar here. IndyCar's kind of similar to Formula One here, and they had a picture with a bunch of drivers, and the only guy smiling is a kid named Christian Lundgaard, who is a Dane. I think he's the only Danish driver involved with it, but he's like the one guy that smiles. Everybody else has kind of got this mean look on there. So like you just look at a photo of Kevin Magnussen standing next to like all the other, all the other Formula One drivers. They got this mean like macho look on their face, and he's just sitting there with this like smirk, kind of like smile on his face. And I'm like, oh, it's because he's from Denmark.
I think there is this might be a very Danish thing, that we are aware that if you deal out smiles to your colleagues and to your families and stuff like that, you may rescue someone from having a bad day, and you get smiles back. And it's a self-enhancing effect, and I think many Danes are aware of that effect and use it. Even if I'm having a bad day, when I go to work, I'll make sure I'll really, really heartily greet my colleagues, and they'll greet me back like that, and suddenly my day is better.
Yeah, that's how it is. I'm looking, and going back to the album with some of the lyrics, some of the things that lyrically, so this isn't really when it comes to my favorite song, but lyrically, there's a lot. I feel that there's a little bit of a reflection, or in the lyrics is a little bit. I feel like a lot of this is written about society, in a sense. Like, for example, when I listen to the lyrics of like "Ignorance is Bliss" or "Dissonance Consonance" or "World of Clay," it almost feels like this is stuff that we themes that we deal with in real life. And I thought the lyrical content of those songs I thought was very, very cool, because I could relate to a lot of what was written in there.
Right. Thanks.
And I don't know. Was that something that, was there a lot of stuff going on in society that really influenced Henrik, that really influenced you to write that stuff? And
I don't know really. And actually, some of these lyrics that you mentioned, I even have a hard time just pinpointing what they're actually about. After I've done them so for a couple of years, it's been a couple of years now since I wrote them, and some of the stuff that comes out of me, you could say I'm not totally aware of where it came from, but it makes sense in some way, in context with the other words. I don't know. I think it should be up to your interpretation what they're actually about, because I know Kim, he reads the lyrics too, and he finds something in those lyrics that I didn't even think when I wrote them. So I say, you think it's about that? Oh, well, it isn't, or perhaps it is. It could be. It could be either thing. It could be many things, right? So I think as a lyricist, I've always tried to be as unspecific as possible, really, because I heard someone say once that the more concrete or the more precise your lyrics are, the less interesting they are to other people. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because you leave it more up to interpretation.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean,
because it causes people to think about it.
Right, and to have their own experience of it, and maybe it's totally different from what I thought when I wrote it. But it's not interesting.
No,
what I thought. It's interesting what you get from them. That's my main point here. Yeah.
Henrik, how did you guys? So you obviously, how did you guys start working together? I'm interested in that story. How did you guys meet? And how did you get into Anubis Gate and start working with the band? I almost feel that the last 2-3 records, the albums that you've been on, I think, vocally and just everything seemed to really come together for the band, songwriting wise. Once you joined, I think it was, I think to me, these last few records, I think this era of the band is the best era of the band. And how did you and Kim and everybody get together and start working with each other?
Oh, yeah. It's funny when you mention eras, because I see people write sometimes the Torben Askholm era was the best, and it's funny how the eras have their own fans, kind of like the Paul Di'Anno era of Iron Maiden. That was the only true Iron Maiden, and and all that. But for me personally, I found my heart and soul with the band after Henrik joined. And that's not discounting the earlier stuff. It was just, it became more of the band that I love the new stuff more, but I love everything I've done, but I love the new stuff more. Sorry, guys.
Oh, but when you say...
But it's a very long story because what? Henrik, hello.
I can't hear. Sorry, once again, you just fell out.
Okay. I say just that for me, the real heart and soul of the band is the band that it is now.
Yeah.
But it was how we met. I mean, Henrik was childhood friends with Jesper before there were any bands, and they formed a band together when they were, what?
Yeah, 12, 13. Yeah. Shall I take it from here?
Yeah, you take it from there. Yes.
Yeah. So we played when we were teens, and then I started playing everything else, other music genres, and went totally away from heavy metal. And Jesper, in the meantime, he met with you, Kim, and formed a band there called the Extreme Feedback something, right? And then at some point, he just found out that he wanted to do something in a very melodic way, and with the old drummer we had, Morten Sørensen. And they found Torben Askon, the first singer, but they needed someone to make some lyrics and some vocal melodies for some of the tracks on back then. And he asked me because we were still friends and stuff, and I thought, oh right. Yeah, I could try that. I've done that before. Maybe I can do something here, right? So I wrote some things on the first album and recorded some backing vocals. And Kim, you did a lot of stuff on the first album. But none of us were in the band back then. We came aboard at the Perfect Forever.
Yeah.
As full-time members, but I was just the bass player then and the backing vocalist, and so we were kind of we joined back then, and we started. Can you say that, Kim, that we started making our way into the process of writing with this band and taking over.
I wouldn't call it taking over. It's just that I think Jesper and old Morten Sørensen, drummer, were kind enough to leave some space for us to buy into with what we had.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say, but then of course there was a process where perhaps we took up more and more space, and that was just a gradual development.
Yeah.
Because I certainly didn't want to take over. It just happened so that over time we are the two left in the band.
Yeah. So yeah, we've been there all the way. Actually, the two of us from the start. Really, in some sort of way, we've been on every album, although we were not in the band at first.
I'm the only one who's played on every Anubis Gate song. Actually.
Yeah. Right.
So I even had tracks on the first album that was only me.
Yeah, right.
2 tracks out of 10 on the first, I mean the intro and the outro, but still it was only me. So
in the band.
And I wasn't even in the band. I was a guest, but I did contribute. What happened was that they were in the studio at Jacobs, and I got a call from Morten or Jesper, I can't remember, saying, can you come down for a weekend and just do anything you like to the album? Put all the keyboards on you want, put all the solos on you want, put all the guitars on you want, and and you have 3 days. And I did that. I went without sleep for 3 days almost, and and built a lot of stuff on what was already ready there. It was really mostly just rhythm guitars, bass, and drums, and a little bit of vocals, and that was it. And I just went amok on it, and they gave me free rein. And I think I kind of played myself into the band there, even though I'm only credited as a guest.
Right.
I had the same route as Henrik musically. After Extreme Feedback brought up, I was like, I always loved metal, but I was like, I'm never gonna play it again because I took a major in jazz playing, and that was, I thought my route was that I was going to be a jazz fusion superstar, and then I got sucked back into the world of heavy metal, and now it has become my artistic career, and I love it, but I didn't foresee it. Maybe I think I needed to be older to garner a lot of experience from other fields of music, and then bring that back into Anubis Gate. And it wouldn't have worked if I was 18 years old. It only worked because I tried so many other things before it.
Same here. I think what we contribute to heavy metal, if you could say that's big words, but that would be all these different genres that the two of us especially have gone through before we joined. Could you say that?
Yeah, and I also think that's where Michael and Morten, both old Morten and Morten Gade Sørensen, new Morten, that's where they are so crucial, because Michael is really a traditional heavy metal player, and if he wasn't there to kind of sometimes wag his finger and say, "Hey, can we please play some metal?" it would be too non-metal. And I mean, that's where, as a song like Equations, which is very much a Michael song, that's where that comes into play and keeps us on the mark sometimes. And Morten Gade Sørensen is a wonderful drummer, but he's a heavy metal drummer by heart. And he sort of, the way he plays makes sure that how we react to it with our instruments is still metal. So
yeah, right.
They keep us metal, and it's good that they do, because Henrik and I can get totally rambling, and a track like Dissonant Consonance is kind of right on the edge of what you can do. Heavy metal thing. And if it weren't for the way Morten plays, it wouldn't be a metal track at all, kind of.
Oh, right.
I'm glad that Morten is playing on it, because you can hear, okay, it's strange, but it's within the framework of heavy metal. That's basically what we do. That's the ground bit of what we do.
Right.
Gotcha. Well, hey, I'm going to wrap this up here in a little bit. And again, I think you guys have done a great record. Definitely. The last week and a half, I've been listening to it. I've definitely really enjoyed it. I definitely think it's one of the better releases you've put out. And I like it better. I like it better than the last album. I really do. And when I say last album, I'm not talking about the covers album, but I'm definitely. It's funny, you talked about doing different kinds of music. I think the covers album sort of reflected where everybody comes from.
Yeah, right.
It did, and it was supposed to. And also, I mean, because we got a bit of flack from some people for doing a covers album, and I think the point of that album was to because Covered in Black was the album about all the darker sides in life, and when you listen to Covered in Black, you will know that Danes are not always happy. Just listen to that album and you'll know.
You're happier than most.
Yeah, yeah. Wow. But if we hadn't, then this album, Interference and Covered in Black, were recorded simultaneously, actually. It was two projects it was just that Covered in Colors was finished earlier. So that became the first album out of the two. But if we hadn't done, for me, if we hadn't done Covered in Colors, we would never have done anything, because I needed a project that was just fun.
Yeah.
So so that's why it exists, that album.
That's the Happy Dane album then.
Yeah. The Happy Dane album, that's covered in colors.
That's funny.
From now, it shall be known as that henceforth.
Well, I thank you guys for coming on. It's definitely a different perspective. You know, you guys have always been a pretty unique band. I guess progressive metal in a sense is pretty unique in itself, but I think that you guys have your own sound. I mean, I think that's something that's difficult to get, and I think that's probably part of the reason, or at least a big part of the reason why I'm drawn to the band the way that I am. You know, because you guys do have, like, if I hear a song, I know it's you guys. So it's it's definitely, you have your own sound, and I think that's one of the biggest reasons I like the band.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, that's good to know. I think I remember when we recorded Andromeda Unchained, and I was in the studio, and Jacob was there, and old Morten Sørensen was there, I think, and he just put on some other album that he had just produced, Danish Mercenary, I think, 11 Dreams. And I was like, oh my God, we suck. I was so disheartened because it was so unbelievably cool. And then Jacob said, no, we just have to allow ourselves to be ourselves. And from that on, I was just, yeah, that's true. We should be as we are. And, that's one of the most important things someone has ever said to me.
Yeah.
Actually, it was, no, allow yourself to be yourself, and don't compare yourself with other bands.
Yeah. Andromeda Unchained is a very good album, by the way. That to me, that album to me was like a turning point for the band, because really when that came out, that set the stage for everything that has come after it up until now. Because the first two albums are just, to me, are drastically different. Yeah. And then once you hit Andromeda Unchained, the band really, I think that's when you sort of found yourselves.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And I think it was the album where I was allowed to come in and co-produce also for me. And I don't know if that was what caused us to find ourselves, but for me, it was the album where I felt, man, this can be long term. I'm really allowed to come in with what I can contribute with, without having to fight for it.
I think too, Kim, it was also the first album that we were on from the start, really, because we were in the middle of A Perfect Forever, and we did write something for it, but we were not in the creative process. I didn't play bass, for instance, on that album at all, because Jesper had already written all the stuff, and he knew exactly what it was. We were getting there on Andromeda Unchained. I think that was the main reason that it changed so much from the earlier stuff that was more Jesper. Could you say that? Maybe.
Yeah, I felt quite involved on A Perfect Forever, but I think I got involved at an earlier stage than you did, actually.
Yeah, all right. That might be.
But Jesper was writing so much stuff, and I think when we came to Andromeda Unchained, he was writing a little bit less. That's what I mean about there was space allowed for us. He was writing a little bit less and asking for us to write more, actually. Yeah. And so that's I think that's the main difference for me, is that there was space for us on Andromeda Unchained.
Yeah, and I heard someone argue that perhaps it was the entrance of Jacob Hansen in the band that caused this change of sound. But actually, what he came with was more like hard rock elements.
Yeah, that was fun because Jacob, was known for his thrash metal band.
Yeah.
And I was expecting him to write stuff like that. And what he was writing was, the most soft melodic songs on the album. I was like, right. Are you sure is it you?
Yeah, right.
Well, Well, gentlemen, it's been great having you on. Any last words to any fans that are going to be checking out this interview?
Famous last words. I don't know. That's kind of always a hard question. Well, for me personally, I just hope that it's an album or a work of art, if you want, that'll speak to people's hearts. I hope that's what I hope we achieve that with this album, because I think ultimately that's the goal of any creative person, is to touch another person's heart.
Yeah, I would say that some of it is it's quite complex and maybe goes in a bit different direction that we've done before. So give it a few listens before you judge. Maybe it could win your in eventually. Right.
My last take on it is I think it's a lot easier of an album to get into. In my opinion.
Yeah.
I stand corrected then.
I think because, and I think part of the reason is the fact that the track order of the songs that you picked, the first song on the album to me is the reason behind that, because once you get into that, it's short, it's straight to the point. Then it's just easy to get into the album from there. It flows really nicely.
Right. Forget all I said.
I mean, that's something that the track listing, the order of the songs, that's something we actually spend enormously amounts of time on. I mean, I will hear every track configuration possible a couple of times, and sometimes, as you say, it's important to. I mean, if you put. I'm not sure a song like Number Stations would have worked if it was the second to last song. When we got there, a song like World of Clay, it needs to be where it is on the album to make it pick up steam after a long song. And as we always try to get, we always work insanely hard on the track list.
Sure.
Yeah. That's right.